Hi YouTube. Right. The other story, one of the more final ones in the PC Plod saga in Worcester against me. 2010. Where was I? I was living in the Arboretum. I'd moved from London Road. Living in the Arboretum opposite Verk's newsagents, the Sikh Indian newsagents, on the corner, on the opposite corner, Northfield Street, is it? Can't remember. Anyway, okay, landlord, he's dead now, he died a few years ago, American guy, painter, severely disabled, local painter, had a shop. The corner house I was in, he owned. Now, he'd converted it into 2 flats. What he'd done, he'd blocked the bottom of the stairs off. So, you know, it was impossible to go down the bottom, to go to the bottom of the stairs in the house and walk through to the ground floor. He walled that up, and at the bottom of the stairs, in the outer wall, he'd knocked a hole through and put a front door in professionally. So effectively, it was two flats. The ground floor had a big rear extension built with, with a separate bathroom and kitchen area. So yeah, okay, right, waffling here. I'm in the upstairs flat, and there's a young couple, middle upper class, quite decent couple, polite. They were there about 6 months, and there was no problem there. Then they moved out, they moved away, and one of the employees of the landlord, a local guy, his daughter was like, what would I call it, a young woman, young female that was like into drink and drugs, bit rough around the edges, you know, like somebody might describe as having been a problem person, you know, rough and ready, yeah. And her boyfriend, I believe he was. No, I won't go into too much detail. He was a rough he was rough as well, okay? They were both dope smokers, cannabis smokers and drinkers. And they moved in, and I was above them, and it was okay, like the first week or two, it was all nice and smiles and how are you? And then the partying started with they're having people back, groups of young people, their friends. No, that's what young people do, I get that, I did it all myself. He had a subwoofer. Some subwoofers, and he had a really powerful amplifier, and I asked him about the music. Can you sort of keep it down? He goes, "Oh, I don't know about that. I think we could have problems because I love my subwoofer," he said. So the noise was an issue, you know, but that's life, innit? What did happen pretty early on, well, after they'd been there a while, I suppose, and sort of settled in, after a few months, They ended up fighting a lot, you know, and because it wasn't a proper separate flat, it was just a house with, you know, a house that had been converted. Between the levels, it was just floorboards. It was just like in a normal house, when, you know, cheap old house, you know, Victorian house, where, you know, if somebody coughs in the living room below and you're in the bedroom above, you can hear them. So you could hear everything, and they could hear. But that's the way it is, you know. I get that. But I could hear them rowing, arguing and fighting a lot. Often seemed to be, it was often when they'd come back drunk from out partying or whatever, and, you know, they were alone together, and you could hear the shouting and the screaming at each other, them both. And I ignored it, but when he started bouncing her head off the walls and punching the doors through, because you could hear wood splintering, just turned out in the end every door had to be replaced downstairs when they left because he punched them through. But you could hear him threatening her and her screaming back, and like a terrible verbal row. But you could hear like a slap, like when somebody gets punched, or there's like a thwack noise, and you could hear her head slam against the wall or the door or whatever, and you could hear her like scream, like a sort of a scream or a squeal in pain and surprise, and you just knew, he was basically hitting her. He was knocking her about seriously. When that was happening, after a while, my conscience, I thought, women do get killed, don't they? They've been killed in domestic violence situations. So what I did, I started phoning the police. Just phone 999, and I'd say, look, blah 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 blah. Obviously 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:30 in the morning, and he's beating her up down there, and she's screaming. The police would turn up pretty quickly, and it was always the same story. The police would knock the door, and they would answer like, with smiles and that, fake smiles, and they would say, no, nothing wrong here. We'd be having a bit of a row, yeah, but no violence, just a heated discussion. And because obviously she was enabling him, to do that to her without her saying anything, she was choosing to. One of these women in an violent abusive relationship. The police didn't do anything, they just left. Well, over about the next year, I must have phoned in, like when they were fighting, I must have phoned in perhaps 10 times, reporting that he was knocking her about. You could hear the screaming and the wood splintering and everything, and things being thrown round, and it just sounded like somebody was being murdered down there almost, How do I know they weren't? So what the police started doing, Worcester Police, what you lot started doing, you plod, is started threatening me, didn't you? You started to say verbally, you started to knock my door afterwards. Obviously, in a loud voice, clearly identifying me as if they didn't know anyway, as the one who'd phoned up. And, the police said to me several times, if you keep phoning this in like this, nuisance calls, wasting our time, you're going to be charged with wasting police time. And I just said, oh, you lot again, can't even do your, incompetence. I've got recordings, which I've still got them. Just switched the camcorder on and picked up the audio. Put them up the bottom of my staircase, which is the other side of their fake wall in the living room when they were beating each other up. So I still got them, clear audio recordings of sounds like her being slaughtered. And I told the cops, and they're like, well, whatever, it doesn't matter. And I said, do you want to hear them? I want you. No, we don't need to. I guess, well, actually, you do, because now you're accusing me of fabricating stories. You do need, and they refused to listen, to these several audio recordings of her being beaten up. And I just said, waste of space, incompetent. And obviously that didn't go down very well. Some straight talking. They like to dish it out, but they can't take it back. But ain't that always the case, in this world, Bullies. They like to dish it out, but they can't take it back. So, yeah, wankers. Bullies, wankers. So, yeah, what happened? It sort of culminated, it came to a head. I went back to Canada for 2 weeks, and I came back to England. So I'd been away for 2 weeks, so they hadn't heard me above, like normal noise above, because I didn't have a sound system. I wasn't blasting music, but they could hear me walking round, like when you're cooking food in the kitchen, my telly, etc., etc. So they hadn't had that for 2 weeks. So on the night I came back, I got back about 9 o'clock at night, 9:30, and I knew they were in below because I could hear them, just like normal noise from them, and they knew I was back. And after about an hour, I just heard her, the woman, screaming. will you keep that effing noise down, you wanker? And I thought, the cheek of it, same old thing. Because there's been a lull, and they've had peace and quiet for 2 weeks of not hearing noise nuisance from not even a properly soundproofed flat above me. They were like, instead of being glad that there'd been a break from it, they were sort of cursing me for coming back to where I lived. And I had jet lag. I was spaced out, And I just shouted, like, so what, just shut your mouth. And I heard this, like, we'll see you outside. And I shouldn't have done it, but I went outside. I went out the front door. And she was there in my face. She come up to me outside. You just cursing me, and threatening me in my face. And I told her where to go, shouted back. And then her boyfriend, it was right behind her. He whipped out a carving knife, a big kitchen carving knife from his back pocket, shouted to her to get in. He was waving his carving knife literally in my face like that. And I just froze. And he said, "Now, F off back inside your flat or you'll get some of this." So I went back inside and I just phoned 999 and told the cops what had just happened. They turned up. But when they turned up, they turned all the lights. The two shysters downstairs had turned the lights out, and everything like they weren't in. But I knew they were in. But because my front door was open, because I was waiting for the cops, I was at the top of my stairs and there's a cop at the bottom of my stairs shining a torch in my face, pointing a taser at me. And he said, "You, freeze, whoever you are." And I said, "I'm the guy that phoned you, the victim." He said, "Well, whatever, but for now, freeze." He said, "Now, slowly with both hands, lift your..." Because I had shorts on. Shorts and vest. Because it was like, when was it? Like May, it was warmer. And I just lifted my vest up and he said, "Just expose your midriff area." And obviously that was so the cop could see I didn't have a carving knife hidden down the back of my shorts. And he said, "Now turn around 360 degrees. And when he could see I didn't have a carving knife hidden anywhere in the shorts or whatever. And I said, "I'm the blah blah." And he goes, all right. Then he realised that, it wasn't me with the carving knife. And he was hammering the door, the cop. And I said, "They're in. They're just pretending they're not." And eventually they opened the door and the cops went in, two of them, and they had a word for about half an hour. And I told the cop when he come back, I said, "This has been going on for a year. He's been knocking the shit out of her. And the police have been up many times. But now, I'd forgotten to say, them downstairs, they'd made a counterclaim against me to try and, it's the same old, isn't it? Making false counterclaims to try and get the heat off themselves. False counterclaims against me." So that they told the cops, because I'd heard them. I heard it saying they thought I was going to poison their dog, and cops staring at me all the time. So I was getting crap off the local cops, death stares in town, all the same cops that kept coming round, like giving me dirty looks in town. Yeah. And obviously I know some of you are still on the beat in Worcester because I see you. "Oh, you're all right with me now," and you want to be as well. Yeah. So, you seem all right with me now. I challenged one of the cops in town a couple of years later. There was some, and I said, "You lot, you and your colleagues didn't do anything. He was knocking the crap out of her," and I said he could have killed her. I told the cops, and this is what I did, because they weren't doing anything and it just carried on the beatings downstairs. I thought, I know what I'd do. I told the cops this, and I said I felt forced to report you lot, Worcester Police, to Crime Stoppers, and tell them the story about what was going on downstairs. That if she got maimed or murdered, or the cops tried to fit me up with anything, even like nuisance calls, that it had been reported to Crime Stoppers. And then I had audio tapes of her being beaten up, like sound effects. And then this cop I challenged in town about it, one of the ones who kept coming round giving me shit, She goes, well, yeah, there's been a lot of changes, since then. That was then. And I said, oh yeah, that was then. That's all right then. She said, well, there's been changes in the law about domestic violence by the government because so many women were getting murdered by the partners. I know all about that. And that was that time when that nutter, that psycho druggie downstairs was beating the crap out of her every other week. And you lot were doing nothing about it. So yeah, that was in the Arboretum, folks, in 2010. What happened to the couple downstairs? Well, because I knew the landlord very well, we had a bit of a business arrangement, but that's nothing to do with. So we knew each other. That's nothing to do with this. But he talked. We spoke a lot about personal things, and he said the amount of damage done to the flat ran into thousands of pounds, and he knew he wasn't going to get it back, and they hadn't paid rent. They'd paid it for about this first 6 months, but the last 6 months, or something like that, they hadn't paid it. It was a lot of money. And because it was a flat that the landlord could normally have charged a lot of rent on, because it had a big back garden, etc., it added to quite a lump sum. So they just left. Eventually, he said, I've told them they've got to go. And if they don't go, because I'm selling the house, which he did sell the house, he's going to have to evict them. So they left before I did, the druggies downstairs. But I'm just trying to think if there's anything else to add to this clip. Anything relevant, that is. Nah. Not that I can recall. Just thinking. No, that's just basically it. Cops never did anything about it. But yet, when when I phoned the cops, they were accusing me of wasting time. It's a pathetic situation, and just like 9 or 10 years ago, So yeah, and there's one, maybe two short stories to come after this, more recent, to wrap everything up to date, and then that's it. Thanks for watching anyway.